They said it was impossible, that no man, no matter how ruthless, could walk into a kingdom of thousands, with only a handful of soldiers and seize its throne. But one did, not with cannons, not with fleets, but with something far more dangerous. Lies, symbols, and steel. This is the forgotten story of how a single European invader, backed by just 20 armed men, brought down an entire civilization, one that had stood for centuries, and how the empire he destroyed never saw it coming. It's not a legend, it's not a myth, it's history, and its truth is far darker than you were ever told. The year was 1532. The place, the Andean highlands of South America. The Inca Empire was the largest, most sophisticated civilization in the Americas. Roads carved through mountains, gold flowing like rivers, and a population in the millions. They had medicine, engineering, and a social structure that functioned with remarkable precision. And yet, within just months, it all unraveled. The man at the center of it all? Francisco Pizarro, a nobody, born poor, illiterate, and forgotten in the backwaters of Spain. He was not a noble. He was not a general. He had no fleet, no kingdom, and no official blessing when he first set sail for the New World. What he had was ambition, and the kind of ruthlessness that history politely erases. He had heard the whispers of a kingdom where gold was so abundant it coated temples, thrones, and even household utensils, where the people worshipped a sun god and their ruler was seen as divine, where conquest would be like slicing through silk. But by the time Pizarro finally arrived in Inca lands, the empire was already bleeding from within. The Inca Emperor Huayna Capac had recently died, likely of smallpox, a disease that arrived before the Europeans themselves. His death plunged the empire into civil war. Two brothers, Atahualpa and Huascar, fought for the throne. The people were divided, the generals were weary, and trust, that most crucial element of any empire, was cracking. Pizarro, watching from the shadows, knew this was his moment. He sent word to Atahualpa, the brother who had emerged victorious. He invited the emperor to a peaceful meeting in the city of Cajamarca. Atahualpa agreed. Why wouldn't he? He had just crushed his brother's armies. He commanded tens of thousands of warriors. These Spaniards were few in number, strange in appearance, and clearly no match for the might of the Inca. So he arrived at Cajamarca with confidence, carried in on a golden litter, dressed in regal feathers, flanked by thousands of his men, though most were unarmed, as a show of peace. But the plaza was eerily quiet. The Spaniards were nowhere to be seen, just empty buildings and suspicious silence. Then, a single friar stepped forward. He carried a Bible and demanded that Atahualpa accept Christianity and submit to the King of Spain. Atahualpa, confused and unimpressed, tossed the book aside. And that was the signal. Cannons exploded, guns fired, metal clashed. From hidden buildings, Pizarro and his 20 men stormed the plaza. Horses thundered forward, creatures the Inca had never seen before. The sound of muskets cracked through the air. Panic spread like wildfire. In less than an hour, thousands of unarmed Inca were slaughtered. And at the center of the chaos, Pizarro himself seized the emperor. With his own hands. No grand army, no drawn-out siege, just one savage ambush. Atahualpa, the living god of the Inca, was now a prisoner in his own empire. The Spanish didn't stop there. They demanded a ransom unlike any in history. Atahualpa offered to fill a room with gold, and 2 more with silver. Not just coins or jewelry, but statues, plates, sacred idols, melted down and carted away as if they were nothing. And still, they killed him, strangled to death, quietly, brutally. As a final insult, they baptized him just before executing him, denying him his spiritual legacy in both worlds. With their emperor gone, the empire fractured into pieces. Inca generals either fled or were executed. Pizarro installed a puppet ruler. Spanish reinforcements trickled in. The conquest was complete. A vast empire brought to its knees by 20 men and a carefully orchestrated lie. But the story doesn't end there. Because what happened in Peru wasn't just about greed. It was about ideology. The Spanish didn't see themselves as invaders. They saw themselves as saviors, liberators of souls, sent by God to civilize the heathens. This justified every atrocity, every burning temple, every enslaved child, every erased language and rewritten law. And here lies the darkest twist of all. It worked. Not just militarily, but psychologically. The Inca world was dismantled so thoroughly that even today, much of their written and spoken history has been lost. Their gods forgotten, their cities buried, their descendants scattered and silenced. And Francisco Pizarro? He was rewarded with land, titles, and gold beyond imagining. He became a governor, a noble, a man remembered in Spain as a hero, until he too was betrayed, stabbed to death in his palace by the very men he once called allies. His body lay bleeding on the floor, forgotten, much like the empire he destroyed. And so history came full circle. One man with 20 swords, an emperor with a divine throne, a civilization extinguished like a candle in the dark. All of it began with a handshake and ended in silence. What if I told you this wasn't the only time it happened? That elsewhere, in jungles, deserts, and islands, empires fell the same way. Not by force, but by deception. Not by armies, but by arrogance. And we still call it discovery. The world remembers the conquerors, but behind every statue of a hero is a graveyard of forgotten kings.